But let's talk to this bloke, Harry. I call him the Peacock because he is a historian for Ipswich. We're in Ipswich. He knows his stuff, and he's got me thinking. I didn't know what an aeronaut was, but he's going to tell us about Ipswich aeronauts and Hunter. I just explain it. G'day, Harry.
Yeah, Danny, how you going?
Mate, you're from historyouthere.com. Check it out. And I've been reading it on my little feed, whatever you call it, the Facebook feed. Is that what they call it?
That's some technical term. Yeah.
Now, Harry, tell us about... First of all, what in the hell is an aeronaut?
Yeah, an aeronaut, Danny, is a traveller in the air. So it's just like an astronaut who travels to the stars. But we're talking about the 1890s, when hot air balloons were the latest, and they had to invent a word. So aeronaut was it.
I've never heard that. You are teaching me all the time, and I need to pay you as the University of Life Skills. Now, tell me the story, Harry.
Yeah, look, like I say, this is back in the 1890s, and this is back when books like Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne was still the stuff of science fiction, and Gliders by Australians like Lawrence Hargrave were only experimental, and Power to Fight by the Wright brothers was still a decade away. Now, the sisters Essie Viola and Nellie Viola were billed as the only lady aeronauts in the world. In fact, the younger Essie was just 16 years old and was called the youngest aeronaut in the world, and also the only living lady aerialist in the world.
Wow.
Now, the Viola sisters were said to be from an American ranch in Texas. And before coming to Ipswich, they'd spent 5 years touring around Australia and thrilling crowds with death-defying balloon flights. Now, Essie would go up in a hot air balloon to an altitude of over a mile and then parachute back to Earth.
Now, when was this? When was this?
This was in the 1890s. Now, parachutes had barely been invented then.
Well, I understood parachutes those days and hot air balloons were made of paper.
Well, they certainly weren't guaranteed, because if you doubted this as a dangerous exercise, dozens of people around the world had died trying exactly the same thing. And it definitely wasn't something that a young lady back then should be doing. So, and I should say that in Gympie, just 12 weeks earlier, before they came to Ipswich, Essie had ascended about a mile when a balloon burst into flames. She survived only by jumping clear just before it crashed. And both the balloon and a parachute, like you say, were pretty flammable, but they were destroyed.
Well, she probably used the bloomers. They wore big bloomers those days. Probably just opened her legs up and whazo down onto the ground.
Well, that might have been a secondary parachute, Danny, but when the Viola sisters came to Ipswich in 1895, they stayed at the old...
Yeah. No, but just interrupt there. Viola, isn't that where you put your chips in? That's that white stuff, Viola? Isn't that what it's called? No, anyhow, keep moving. It's called areola or something. I don't know. Keep moving.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, look, they might have cooked chips at where they stayed at the old North Star Hotel, which was at the corner of Ellenborough and Brisbane Streets, opposite St Paul's Anglican Church.
Yes.
And back then, the North Star was the biggest and best hotel in town, so it was suitable for the celebrities to stay at. Wow. So on the afternoon of Saturday the 13th of July, 1895, crowds filled the Sandy Gallop Showground with about 600 people paying $1 for the best view. There were crowds everywhere. In fact, they're in the best places like Denmark Hill, that filled up there, for people wanting a free look. Anyway, they started filling the balloon at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At about 5 o'clock, Essie made an appearance, but went back inside the caretaker's office. They kept filling the balloon, but Essie never reappeared. And by 6 o'clock, the crowd began leaving in total disgust, Danny.
Why?
The balloon never got filled. The tickets, however, were valid for another ascent. But there's no record of another ascent by the Viola sisters in Ipswich or anywhere else. In fact, this was their last appearance by the lady aeronauts in Australia before they left the country.
She lost her nerve.
Oh, I know. But they next turned up in San Francisco a couple of months later, where Millie was promoting a new stunt of swimming across Niagara, above the falls, after being dropped from a barrel from a balloon. So, Danny, Ipswich holds the distinction of hosting the only lady aeronauts in the world in their last appearance in Australia, even though they never got off the ground.
Mate, I'm not making this up. Your stories are brilliant. The woman... She had a lot of hot air in her, probably. That was a problem. But what a great yarn. Where do you find this stuff?
Well, there's so much inspiration in Ipswich, Dan. You know that. Yeah. In fact, although it's interesting, speaking of you, in this story, there just wasn't enough hot air in Ipswich. So, times might have changed.
Well, they should be here on Wednesday. It's 43 degrees. They get plenty of hot air.
That's right.
Now, how do we get your stories?
Yep, go to historyouthere.com.
we'll talk to Harry the H. Peacock again with historyouthere.com here in Ipswich next week at 8:20. We're live in the bowels of Ipswich.